Fake friends. I think, like that's something that we see a little bit more of these days. Everyone that has friends has, different levels of friendship. Some maybe are really, really close. It's been an old friend, you share a lot, you have a lot of memories together, or you just click better. You maybe have more hobbies or interests together. So everything I talk about, you know, um, I just want to keep that in mind that we have different levels of friends normally. But also, I think it's important to keep in mind that, as we reach retirement age, this having what kind of friends you have can really kind of help that quality of life in retirement or hinder it because we're putting more of our time and stock into that relationship than if we're working 50 hours a week with a wife and tiny kids to care for. But one thing, obviously you want to keep your eyes and ears open to signs of disrespect. So if they cancel, your time together at the last minute and don't really seem genuinely sorry for doing that, and it seems to happen a little bit more than it should, that's a sign of disrespect. In the same vein, showing up considerably late. You've got a culture here in America, and you've got different cultures in like maybe South America or Hawaii. Hawaii, they call it island time. So you're not expected to really be on time. But here in North America, 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late isn't that big a deal. But even 10 or 15 minutes late, you should be getting a text to let you know that they're going to be arriving a little bit later than they said they would. And if they don't and they show up and they act like it's really insignificant, it's no big deal, even though they showed up 45 minutes late, and you were rushing to be ready for him to get there. Maybe you had some chores to do, some laundry or whatever, and you really, really were running around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to get prepared for that 2 o'clock time that the friend was supposed to show up. And then they don't show up till 2:45 or 3, and you're sitting on the couch kind of trying to look for things to use your time. Um, that's kind of disrespectful. And if they didn't text you first and they act like it's no big deal when they show up, and then it happens somewhat more frequently than it should, these are all signs that you're kind of low on their totem pole. Out of the friends they do have, you're one of these that is not very important to them and does not deserve the same level of respect as maybe some of their other friends. One red flag, not only with friends but really with everyone, is do they complain a lot about others? Anyone that complains a lot about others, that is a form of gossip, because they're saying, it's really frustrating when John does this, and he's done it like 5 times in the last 6 months, and it's like, really, I don't need to hear this. One, and two, you're gossiping behind your friend's back with me, and that's disrespectful. That's something that the Lord hates. And you can pretty much bet your bottom dollar that they're going to be complaining about you behind your back to someone else in good time. When you get together, do they show the same level of enthusiasm? Do they have a good energy level with positivity, some excitement? some interest in what you have to say. Narcissists love to poo-poo what you say. So, if you're being a really good listener, you're listening to your friend's story, maybe it goes on like 15 minutes, maybe you're shooting pool or you're playing a game of chess, and he starts telling a story that goes on and on and on, and you're really got eye contact, you're paying attention, you ask appropriate questions of clarification. You maybe say, yeah, I can understand how that would be frustrating or whatever. So you're showing that's kind of active listening, what they call it. Yeah, if A, B, and C happened to me, that would get me a little frustrated as well. That's kind of active listening, that's reassuring and supportive. And then you go to tell a story, and there's just like no interest. They keep having to get up and, oh, I forgot this. Or if they're driving, it's like, they'll totally interrupt you and go, damn, what's that guy doing, looking in the rearview mirror? And you're like, couldn't you have just like kind of noticed that person was doing something that you were unsure of and not have interrupted my story? You could have looked in the rearview mirror and kind of thought in your own head, what is that guy trying to do? And then look back at me once you pulled up behind the car in front of you, and nod your head and say, yeah, okay. And then what happened? So that is, I'd say, one of the biggest red flags that the person is a narcissist, because narcissists actually do that on purpose. They're very full of themselves and consider themselves very powerful and important. So it's only fitting that you should pay good attention and ask questions and have good eye contact when I tell a story. But you're not the same as me, and I want you to understand that I'm superior. So, I'm glad you just listened so good to my story for 15 or 20 minutes, but now I'm going to send you the opposite message that we're not on the same level, and when you tell a story, it's boring, I'm not interested. And I want to send that message to you purposefully so that you feel inferior to me. One big red flag is if the wife seems to show enthusiasm, kindness, respect to your other friends, but don't show that same level of enthusiasm and respect towards you, and pretty clearly doesn't favor you, maybe you could go so far as to say dislikes you, chances are that was engendered by your friend. Okay, I'm speaking from a male perspective, but you could switch it up, obviously. So normally, if that wife perceives that her husband holds you in high regard, then she's going to treat you with respect. I mean, if this is a marriage based on respect and give and take, they treat people that their husband values as someone they value with respect. So if the wife is treating you with disrespect, chances are your friend doesn't like you very much. And I know that sounds harsh to say, but in this world these days, you have people that will keep other people around even when they don't particularly like them very much, don't care for their personality very much, or maybe are envious. It's weird, but many narcissists can get very envious of someone that doesn't make much money, only rents a one-bedroom apartment or even a studio, and maybe has a life that's kind of full of strife, that's hard to figure out. Why do I have so many trials and tribulations and strife? And these sometimes these friends that have a 3-bedroom house, you know, a good paycheck, you know, a nice title at work, and they'll be envious of you. And it's because of that light you carry and that genuineness, that authenticity, being comfortable in your own skin that they're envious of. But it's always kind of weird. It's like you've got everything perfect, everything the way you manicured it and wanted it. You know, you got the pretty wife, you got the 2 kids, the white picket fence, the little dog named Spot. You know, good status at work, good paycheck. You know, how could you possibly be so envious of me when I'm divorced? You know, blah 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 blah. I got all these problems. You know, it's that they also know that you have some connection to the divine, and they also know that their day of reckoning is around the corner. You know, on some level, whether it be fully conscious or fully unconscious, they know that they are living a wicked lifestyle, and that, you know, it's the scripture tells us that it's written on our heart, you know, that morals, and that even there is a God, a creator that exists. And so on some level they can deny it in the forefront of their mind, but on some level they know their day of reckoning is coming, and that, you know, everything's being observed, and there's going to be a day of judgment. There's going to be a day of reckoning eventually. Everyone kind of, you know, knows that on some level. Atheists are really pushing that down, that knowledge. Oh, on the same vein, you know, their friends clearly don't show you the same level of rapport or desire to establish that level of rapport or respect as they're showing with your friend. And so, once again, major, major red flag. They have probably heard negative things from you, whether it's from your friend himself, or your friend said things to his wife, and his wife went and told their wives, and their wives told the friend. So, but no matter what, it's all generated from how that friend sees you. What level of respect are you getting from the whole group, right? It's all related back to how much your friend values your friendship and you as an individual. You know, one thing I really enjoyed as a kid was gardening. And, you know, it's something that's very therapeutic about it. And it's really, really, I have some flowers I'm trying to grow right now. And there's always that joy of seeing every morning when I wake up, like, how are they doing? You know, have they grown? Have they sprouted some buds yet? You know, some little flowers. And you're caring for something. Anytime you're caring for a living thing, it benefits you greatly. So, but in order to garden properly, you have to cultivate the soil. You have to, I use that word manicure. You have to tend to it, right? It's a daily thing that requires attention. Usually you're watering twice a day. You know, you're going to pick off dead leaves. You're going to maybe build a little chicken wire fence around it to keep out squirrels or whatever. So just like a friendship, though, you've got to have that interest and put in anything that relationship needs out of that appreciation, that seeing it as valuable. Sincerity, you know, more and more these days, in the year of our Lord 2025, some just can't be sincere. And any relationship, if if it's up and running long enough, is going to have an issue eventually. You're going to eventually have an issue in any relationship as long as it's long lasting. So, can they honestly address it? Can you go to this friend and say, hey, you got a minute, John? I'd like to sit down and maybe talk with you for a few minutes. Sure, what's up? What's the matter? Well, do you remember how on Saturday, blah, 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 and they're willing to listen to you and give a heartfelt response without being offended. Because a narcissist, any complaint, they're going to be extremely offended. In their mind, it's how dare you, right? You don't ever get to complain to me about anything I do. Basically, I'm perfect, and you need to look upon me as that. I walk on water in your mind. So if I do something that irritates you, that's your issue, right? I'm a god, basically. You're a peon. So you don't get to complain to me about how I'm acting, right? So you want someone that, is sincere and can deal with something that's not perfectly copacetic, right? And in the same lines is that anger or drama that appears unwarranted. So I had this one individual that just narcissists want to be chased. Narcissists want to be pursued. And it's very important for them to feel that in the relationship, you're the one that's motivating it. You're the one that's doing the majority of the calling, the texting, the asking out. And with this friend, I started to realize, that he wanted that, and he was trying to promote that. And the main way he was kind of promoting it is he wouldn't call or text me, but if I would go a certain amount of time without calling or texting him, he would start to act like he's got hurt feelings, like I'm not being a good friend, and kind of express that, through text messages where he's like, basically almost crying, and it's like, a relationship's two ways. You have a phone too with numbers on it where you can dial my number, and so, if that happens where it's like, I'm realizing I'm really calling and texting and asking this person to do things most of the time, and I'm going to pull back a little bit to his level. And then when you do that, they get drama. They give you drama, and they give you some anger. Like, what's wrong? And it's like, it's a relationship. It's two ways, right? And, it's really not even worth addressing. It's better to just be like, I've been busy, if you don't like it, pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? It's not difficult, And like in this individual, I just started, whenever we would see each other, I would say, hey, anytime, you need a favor or you want to hang out, feel free to text me. Feel free to call me. Whenever we were going our separate ways, I would say that every single time. Do you think it landed? Do you think it made a difference? Of course not, because he needed to feel superior. He needed to feel pursued. He needed to feel that I couldn't live without him. When I got the good Lord, I can live without anybody. So there you have it. We all, if you're close to me in age, you kind of would enjoy having someone, to kick it with and spend a little time with. Like I went and saw a good movie the other day. It was called The Last Rodeo. And, I kind of do feel weird going to movies with guys, so maybe it's not the best example. But we used to always have that chair in the middle. So, um, but, sometimes you'll get looks if you go to a movie with a guy, like, oh, are they a couple? But, it would have been nice to go with a good friend. So we all like to have someone that, or especially if you have interests in common. Like my best friend for like 28 years was a Dodger fan, but he was more of a Laker fan. But I love talking to him about Dodgers, and also even my narcissistic brother. He followed all sports. He had to be the most knowledgeable person on any sports discussion, except for maybe hockey or golf. The big three: basketball, football, baseball. Got to know everything about all three of those. So, God bless. Leaving me a message, hit like or dislike, and I'll talk to you later.